So, my name is Stuart Reid. I am the Executive Director of the Food Co-op Initiative, which has started out its life as Food Co-op 500 about 5 years ago, maybe a little more. It's probably a little more. The name implies our goal. We set out to see a total of 500 food co-ops across the country. And hopefully, I think the original year targeted was 2015. Right now, I think we've moved from about 275 to somewhere over 325, and we have 150 or more in the pipeline. Whether they'll be open by 2015, I don't know, but we're making really good progress toward that goal. And it's something that I'm happy about. The movement is continuing. We're getting still continue to get new inquiries all the time.
How do you spell your last name?
It's probably on one of the slides, but it's Reid, R-E-I-D. I'm also this year, we consider ourselves a cooperative development center. We're funded in part by the USDA grant program. This is good. The USDA grant program, and as such, that was all we needed. There we go. We're a development center, and I'm a member of Cooperation Works, which is a cooperative of development centers across the United States. And this year I'm chairing that organization, which is part of the reason why I've been involved with the national discussions. So, I'm giving credit here to Mr. Bill Gessner, who was inducted into the Co-op Hall of Fame this week. And this is not the official plaque. This is one that was made up just to somewhat humorously because of his great love for tennis. He's got the cross tennis rackets here. A lot of the material I'm going to share with you today was originally developed by Bill and has been taught by Bill. Clearly he was tied up a little bit this week and is not able to be here. And I've been working with that model and presenting it to groups like this and to individual co-ops for some time. And I think what we have to work with today is one of the best tools that is out there. So, the question is, how do we look at planning the finances to get a store open? Just to be clear, the sources and uses budget is a startup budget, and that's what I'm talking about today. Not your pro forma budgets, not your budgets for how the store is going to look while it's operating. That's far and above and beyond what we could even begin to touch in an hour and a half. The sources and uses budget is a really important tool that's often overlooked or underappreciated, and I think can be grasped fairly easily, and I'd like to talk about it. So, real quickly, it was suggested, and I think it's a great idea. I'd like to know who you are and what your interest is, what your project is that you're working on, if that's a specific startup, or if you're supporting somebody else's startup, whatever, that would be great. And if you're using any kind of a budget of any kind right now, if you just, we're going to have to do this kind of quickly so we don't spend the whole time on it. Just, aren't you? Is it homemade? Do you have a model for it? Do you like it? Can you say all that in, you've got, let's say 30 seconds each. Okay.
Gary Cook, have a nonprofit member last year called Homes for the Upwardly Mobile, designed to create housing for transition age youth who were booted out of foster care initially. And we're looking at this weekend trying to start some social enterprises to be incubated by the nonprofit as worker co-ops, possibly a housing co-op. But one of the worker co-ops is we're hoping to be a food co-op, and then aquaponics to grow our own food to put into the food co-op.
Great. That sounds fascinating.
No budget yet.
Yeah, okay, and I will say that this is based on work with food co-ops and consumer co-ops, but it's very translatable. There'll be some things that'll be different, but I think the concept is almost universal. Patrick, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm Patrick Reagan. I've been leading the effort to establish a consumer co-op grocery store in Southern California. We've been at it now for a few years. At a previous conference, it's probably CCMA, I got a copy of a real basic thing that Bill had done, and then we took that and ran with it. So we have a sources and uses budget that we're following right now. It's very detailed. Also profit and loss, income projections, pretty much the whole gamut financial statements. We had to do that in order to submit paperwork with the California State Department of Corporations for our application of qualification for loans.
Okay, that's one of the points I'm glad you raised it, because it's one I'm going to make too, is this isn't optional, folks. If you don't have it, at least unless you're going to do a shoestring startup, you'll need this.
Can I add one thing also? Yep. These have been very helpful for our board to figure out what we're going to do. It also is very helpful to reassure our members that we really know what we're doing. We really thought these things through.
Yep.
Yeah, it's part of our business business model, business plan, and it's been very useful in improving our credibility with the community.
Great.
Absolutely. My name is Diana Hyatt, and we are starting another co-op in Southern California, in Riverside. No, we're far from each other, so we couldn't shop at each other's stores.
I mean, we have like 18 co-op stores in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So.
And we don't have.
Yeah,
really
you
that
can't
many
get
in
too. That's what I mean when I
California.
say you can't have too many. I mean it.
And we are still in the just organizational stage, so we're not nearly as far along. We've been at it for less than a year, so we have no budget at this point.
My name's Darcy O'Brien, and we're trying to start a consumer food co-op in Vallejo, and we're just in the beginning, and we don't have a budget yet.
Well, we go up to the front row and move back. You can be next.
My name is Alejandra Escobedo. I come from Richmond, from the Latina Center. We have 12 years working with the Latino community, and right now we are promoting the creation of cooperatives in Richmond with the CCD. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Carmen Figueroa. My partner and I operate a small food business based in San Francisco, and we are learning, everything.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess we'll go to you.
Hi, my name is Diego Rodriguez. I work for Kiva.org. We're going to be doing a panel in the next session. We actually have some budget forms and templates that to help people sort of figure out where they are and where they need to go. So I can expand on that later.
Okay.
I'm Alicia Dienst. I'm on the board of directors of the Sacramento Natural Foods Co-op. Yeah, thanks. And we're looking at doing a store relocation and expansion.
Boy, that must be.
Assuming we get approval from our membership.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
sure you're going to be looking at the budgets real close on that one. aren't you?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Michelle Rainville. I am a local foods, local agriculture, farmers market supporter, and I'm finding other co-ops to be a part of and to support and work with.
I'm Rachel Quinn. I'm from the Davis Food Co-op. Other than working at the Davis Food Co-op, I don't have a startup or anything that I'm involved with. I'm just here to get information.
You fix that for you. You just saw it.
My name is Bijia Young. I'm from the Davis Food Co-op, and I'm here mostly just to learn.
Jeff Bordelon, Placer County. We're early stages of creating a consumer food co-op, and we have no budget.
Jacob Jaggi, the Foothills, and we're trying to create a consumer co-op, food co-op in Sonora, and no budget yet at this point. We're still figuring those things out.
Okay.
I'm Carly Pereira. I'm with the Mission Asset Fund, and we're also on the next panel with Diego.
Okay.
So I'm just here to get information. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs in the Bay Area, so this budgeting piece is important for anybody. So.
You bet.
My name is Gerald Jenkins. I'm here as part of the Mission Asset Fund.
Okay.
And when I originally came, I was just here to participate with Carly. And now I'm thinking this might not be a bad idea for something a friend of mine wants to start. He wants to start a tuition-free university.
Oh.
Yeah, we're all chess players, and we teach chess in after-school program. And so now recently we've been talking about starting a tuition-free university in the Oakland and East Bay area.
Oh, that'd be fun. That's always, I say fun, and I mean it. I mean, the most rewarding thing you can ever do is start a food co-op, but I will acknowledge it's also one of the most frustrating, and it can be both at the same time. We got a couple people that just came in. If you just real quick say who we are and.
Hi, I'm Dan from Oxide Bikes.
Yep.
Bobby from Vallejo Co-op.
Okay.
Thank
All right. Okay, so a few of you have some kind of budget, and a couple of you have gone quite a ways on it already. And I am going to say that it's never too early to get started on it, and this is one way to do it without having to learn accounting first. I have to bring up this. When we're talking about budgeting, we're talking about how are we going to bring the assets of the community to focus on our project to meet the needs of the community. But we are talking about bringing in community assets. And this model is one we promoted. Bill, again, I'm going to back to Bill Gessner. He was involved in creating this model template. It's a good way to think about your organizing no matter what you're doing. I mean, I use it for things that aren't even related to co-ops. But it breaks down, there's the cornerstones that have to be there to support what you're doing, no matter which stage of the project you're in. And that's the vision, talent, capital, and systems. And for food co-op organizing, we break that down into 3 main stages of organizing stage, first stage, feasibility and planning, when you're getting the nitty-gritties together, and implementation, where you're actually starting to do your building work, your build out, bringing in inventory, hiring people, getting the store open. Since that was developed, we're almost up to about 7 stages now. We keep fine-tuning it, but it's easier to think of this way, so we'll leave it at that. But there's a lot more information about this model on that template on our website, and I'm going to refer you to the website often because we use that as our library of resources. It's a free resource that all of you can use.
Sorry, are you talking about the
Food Co-op Initiative website, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
And so, and that leads me to my other question, which is, will your presentation be available online as well? Okay.
Yes, I will. It will be available. Maybe with some added notes, but it will be on our website, and it's being recorded and will be available on YouTube and sometime down the road a little bit. Okay. A lot of the presentation hopefully will give you the introduction you need, but the actual tools are there all the time and are already there on our website. So the vision stage, just going through that 4 cornerstones in 3 stages. Vision is where we are at the beginning, especially, and this is, I'm just going to look at these 4 cornerstones in light of what we're talking about for budgeting. The vision of what your co-op is going to be is based on what does your community need and want, obviously. And what kind of storefront will you need that can meet those needs? These are important questions. It's not, I found an empty building, I think it would make a great co-op. That's exactly backward. I have a community that needs food. There's this many people. They would spend this much money. Now, where is the right facility that can support that kind of business? Okay, I bring that up because it's one of my, I see that a lot, where the people don't approach it from the needs of the business as much as they do from the opportunities that they think they're seeing. In talent, again, these are all things that are going to dramatically impact that budget of yours. Can you do all this yourself in-house with volunteers? You bet. It'll cost you twice as much as it will if you pay somebody. That's the short answer. Well, this is what budgets are all about, right? But we're looking here, when we're talking budgeting, very specifically, how much do you need to be able to make that dream, a very important plan, bring it into reality? Not just to get the doors open, but to keep it sustainable past opening. A couple of presentations I heard earlier today, people were talking about their working capital. Almost inevitably, working capital gets overlooked or is underfunded. So that's part of getting open. Realistically, what can you bring in from your community? Potential, desire for a very large, very fancy co-op that can do everything for everyone. You want a community kitchen, you want a big restaurant deli in there, the whole works. Can your community support you to do that? Is that realistic? Okay. And what are your other sources of financing? We're going to talk about financing a little bit, but not the nitty-gritty, just the sources. And then the systems that you need. And again, these are when we're talking about a sources and uses budget, you may have to pay to have some of these systems in place. You certainly need them, need to have them in order to do the planning properly. Okay, so what exactly is this thing? I usually just call it an S&U, but it's sources and uses budget. It's not the operating budget. It's your financial plan for getting the store open. It includes all of the costs that you're going to incur for starting a business, and the ones that occur after opening that aren't related to operations. So that's where that working capital comes in. It's the money you need to cover your losses in the first 3 years, folks, maybe more. That's typical for a new co-op. It's typical for any new business. And where are you going to raise the capital? Okay, it's a planning tool, just like any other planning tool. The sources and uses budget helps keep you aligned with where you're going. If you start deviating too far one way or the other, it gives you, you see it. It's pointed out right there. I was supposed to be spending this much, and I'm supposed to be bringing this much money. I'm not getting it. It's not there. What do I have to do? Before it's too late, before you open the store and realize that I don't have enough money to keep the store running. So think of it like any other budget. It's not a be-all and end-all, but it's a roadmap. And if you get off the road, it helps you find your way back on. As I said, it's not an operating budget, but the other thing that it isn't is any indication whatsoever of how successful your business might be. If you just the fact that you can identify what it's going to cost to open the business and you know where you're going to get the money, and even if you can do both of those things, get all the money you think you need, your business can still fail miserably because you didn't think ahead to what the sales volume is going to be, or didn't have any market study done, or you've got no parking in an area that depends on commuters. And I've seen all of these things actually happen in real life. These are not theoretical. So, reality checks. All right, here we go. This is the nitty-gritty. Now, I'm going to explain all this. So don't try to absorb it all right now. This is what a sources and uses, an abbreviated form of a sources and uses budget would look like. You have a list of the specific kinds of ways that you're going to need to spend money to get open, and you have a similar list of the specific ways that you're going to bring in money. And it's broken down into some subgroups. The money that comes in from members in particular is important here versus what might come from outside sources and primary debt. And as you can see, I've highlighted one number at the bottom in both columns, and coincidentally, they both match. It's not a coincidence, folks. The sources and uses budget doesn't work if your sources and your uses don't match. And here's what happens. This is what you do in real life, though. When they don't quite match, in the best case scenario, you have extra sources. So all you have to do there is add a little bit extra to working capital allowance. Never hurt to have extra money in your working capital allowance. Bring it back into balance. If you're a little short, well, then where are you going to take it out? What can you give up on? We'll talk about the details of this, like I said, but that's basically what we're talking about. It's not that complicated. It's broad categories, not line item bits of information. Some people do try to break it down to that, but it really isn't that necessary. So before we start trying to look at the details of how to make that budget, the big assumptions you have to answer before you can even start are you going to be leasing or buying? I mean, a big difference in the budget there, obviously. How big? Keeping in mind that you have your retail space is where you generate your revenue, but you need about a third more than that to have warehousing, offices, and other things. And it's probably not as big a deal as it was, but a couple of years ago even, I always saw projects being not putting in anywhere near enough office space because people planning grocery stores were hadn't caught up with real grocery stores. Grocery stores used to be operated out on the floor. Now with everything's computerized. You've got people doing ordering in the office. Everything's being managed from the office. We just need more space in the back room. So there's a couple of assumptions there that you may not have the answers to on day one. In fact, I'd be really surprised if those of you who've just started organizing have all of the answers to these. So what do you do? Well, you can do more than one sources and uses budget. Do one for a lease scenario, do one for a buy scenario. Don't know how big you're going to be, but you have a general idea? Yeah, start with that. Or do 2 or 3 at different sizes and see how they compare. It's a good way to think about, what's the implication of having a smaller store versus a larger store. And it isn't that hard to do, as I'm going to show you. And the sales levels is critically important because that goes beyond just what it costs to open the store to whether or not you're going to be feasible or not.
Stuart, about that, maybe you're planning on going into more a little bit later on, but Cooperative Grocer used to publish every year this article about average sales per square feet,
right.
Margins. It was a really interesting article. They stopped doing that in 2006, apparently, and I wrote the editor, and he says that they're not doing them anymore.
That's right.
Do you have another source for startups that can get that information?
I have access to that information.
Okay.
It is restricted. I can't give you, what I can give you is summary information,
Yeah.
but talk to me, yeah.
It was nice just to get to know
The other place you can, the other place you can get that information, what we're talking about, the article was based on, and if you don't know Cooperative Grocer Magazine, let's back up that one more step. You should, but you should be subscribing to it. If you don't subscribe to it, you can get past issues that are archived online for free. It's a fantastic resource. It's about mostly consumer, retail food co-ops. The article they posted was based on the CocoFest database. Anybody in here know what that is besides Patrick? Yeah, okay, I didn't think so. It's an acronym for Common Cooperative Financial Statements. It's a project that was started with the Midwest co-ops working together to better their businesses by sharing their financial information. And they have had one organization, to begin with it was an individual, not an organization, compile all of that into a really sophisticated database so that they could do side-by-side comparisons of their margins by department, of their labor costs, of everything. And as they got more sophisticated, they could break it down by region and by store size and all kinds of different ways. And now they're using a database tool that's so state-of-the-art that what we have in that financial database is better than almost any corporation in the country. I mean, this is incredible data. And it's only possible because co-ops work together. Competitors in any other business, in any other field, they'd be competitors and wouldn't do it. Okay, so NCGA members have always submitted their data since it became commonly used. And that as an organization, they became a little bit concerned about the sensitivity of this high-level financial information getting in the wrong hands. So they asked that there be some restriction on how much of it was shared, and that's when they cut back on publishing those summaries. Personally, I don't think there's that much risk in it, but that's not my decision. And I do have access to that database and can share it in a limited way. It's a fantastic tool for any of your budgeting. It isn't so necessary for the sources and uses, but when you're doing like a pro forma budget for operations, it's almost impossible to do a co-op budget without that kind of information. And the only option that most of you will have, realistically, is to work with a consultant to help develop those budgets that does have access to this information. So, I would recommend you would do that anyway, working with a professional. The budgeting, 5-year budget projections or 10-year budget projections for a new retail food co-op are incredibly difficult. They don't match up any other kind of business, not even other natural food grocery stores. Co-ops are just too different. So even experienced accountants can't do it right.
Where do we get a resource to talk to somebody about that?
That picture at the beginning of this presentation of the guy that was getting the award, he's the pro. And he works with hundreds of co-ops and is, if you can hire one person to do it, that's who I'd recommend is Bill.
That's CDS?
Yeah, CDS Consulting.
Okay.
They split off, there's another organization called CDS, not that it matters that much, but yeah.
But I could get the wrong one maybe?
They would pass you on immediately, they know each other.
Okay.
All right, so that was, I think, a very worthwhile side note because this financial information, the information is out there. Some of it's, very little of it is restricted like that. But this is such high-level information. goes down to minute detail about the financial performance of co-ops that I understand why they're concerned. So more information you're going to need for your sources and uses budgeting to make reasonable assumptions. You have to have a general idea what it's going to cost to lease space in your community. And most co-op leases are triple net, which means you're going to be responsible for real estate taxes, insurance, and if it's a space, it's a building that has more than one tenant, common area maintenance means your share of that shared space in the building. So that's information you can usually gather fairly easily by working with realtors, business realtors, or just talking to other businesses. While it isn't going to directly impact your sources and uses budget, it's never too early to start thinking about this parking piece. It'll kill you if you don't have it. And if you have to rent parking or find parking options for beyond what's included in your space, business space, problem. The date of possession and date of opening are important because between the time when you start making financial commitments or hiring your first staff and when you open, you're paying bills. That's why those are in there. All right, now let's start breaking it down. Here's how you do it without knowing anything at all about co-op finances. It's all in the template that we have on the website. I'm not showing you the whole template because it would be too tiny on this wall to even look at. But we show what the standard rates are for all of these line items on a sources and uses budget, what the typical range of cost would be. And after seeing this through literally hundreds of co-ops, some of them are startups, some of them are expansion projects that Bill has worked with and I've worked with, it's remarkably accurate. So even though you may not have an exact quote on it, you can look at this number and say, I know I'm going to spend almost this much. Now, these numbers are going to start looking real scary real fast, okay? But let's be realistic about it. So leasehold improvements are surprisingly expensive. Cost of building materials is up, labor is up, and very few buildings come outfitted for a food co-op. People just consistently do not understand how sophisticated a business grocery is. You've got to have excellent heating, ventilation, and air conditioning because it has to take the humidity out of the air so all of your refrigeration doesn't go kaput on you every 6 months. That's an expensive system. If you've got a kitchen, you've got to have a hood and makeup air system and fire suppression and a $250,000 starting point for that kitchen. I mean, that's basic. And so this is why this adds up so fast. You need a lot of electrical, you need a lot of information services, phone lines, plumbing lines for all the refrigeration. If you've got a concrete floor, where are you going to put them? Jackhammer. You're going to trenches in the floor, put in your lines, pour new concrete, put down a new floor on top. Oh, and that old floor, by the way, that was in the store, that was asbestos. Now you've got an asbestos abatement project on your hands. This happens a lot. This is what people have to deal with. So when you think that $70 to $80 a square foot for improvements sounds high, that's why. Equipment. Everybody looks at that and says, I can do it for less than that, I'll get used stuff. Okay. Cheaper now, you'll pay for it later, I guarantee it. Higher maintenance, lower efficiency, higher electrical bills, doesn't merchandise as well, doesn't look as good, mix and match throughout the store. Yeah, you can do it. It's a choice. It's a marketing choice is what it really is. Inventory, that one's a little easier to define. The reason there's a range at all is because it'll depend on what you want to sell in your store. You know, that's market driven. If it's a large produce department, that inventory number will be a little lower. If it's a large health and body care section, it's going to be higher. You know, things like that. And then fees. We talked about the possibility of doing almost anything you want by learning how to do it yourself and muddling through. Well, if you hire people to do it, we recommend 12% as a starting point. This is one where I often do see it, the actual come in lower. But again, we're being conservative. Let's start out with a number that we know can cover it. $30,000 for project management. It's an investment. It'll save you time. It'll ensure that things stay on target. that somebody has accountability to make sure things are happening. We find that projects with project managers go much quicker and usually have better success rates. It's not essential, but it's very, very helpful. Other things are essential. You'll have some design, legal fees. There's no way around that, and financing fees. So some of the other things that don't add up to quite as much but have to be remembered: operating and administration before you open. If you're hiring, if you have a bookkeeper or anything like that, whatever you're paying people to do things. Startup promotion. Boy, it's tempting to leave that off. But when you're in a highly competitive business like a food co-op, grocery industry, people have to know you're there. And you have to, spending that money up front can really make a big difference. If you don't, you're going to be out there pounding the streets later and trying to play catch up. So, is it flexible? Of course it's flexible. Are there ways to do promotion more cheaply? Yes. This is a starting. Startup staffing is based on the knowledge that you have to hire your general manager and at least some of your staff before you open the store. They have some prep work to do, right? So we generally recommend a general manager 6 months or more out. And having been a general manager of a startup, I would say more. Please give us the time to get the job done right. It's really so much to do to get ready. And staffing for at least a month, and that's so that you can get the shelves stocked, people learn how the store works, they can train, the department managers can train their staff, cashiers learn how to use the registers. Okay? It's very realistic. Site holding costs. You're probably going to start paying rent before the store opens, while they're doing renovations or whatever. All negotiable. Don't forget it though. Interest. You have to have the money to pay the bills before you open, so you're paying interest before you open. This one we just added in the last couple of years as we saw more and more often that co-ops have not left enough money in their budget to get help if they have trouble after they open. And guess what? Most co-ops have trouble after they open, at least some. They could use some help on one area or another, and it's just not in the budget. And surprisingly, one of the areas that almost every co-op needs help with is board training. Boards have gone from being operationally focused on getting a store open, and now they have to be an oversight board supervising a general manager, and that transition is just harder than heck for boards to go through. So that's one example of why we would suggest having some money set aside for unexpected training needs and support. You can't go too high on working capital. 6 to 8% of the first year's sales would be a good start.
Yep. A quick question on the board of the directors. Do they get paid, or is that a voluntary?
Not usually. It's up to the co-op. There are some co-op board members who do get a stipend, but it's very unusual to see that for a startup co-op.
Okay.
It's usually a volunteer position. Okay. And finally, the overrun allowance. And you add up everything else and then add 15% on the bottom line. Okay, that's a lot of money by the time you've done all the rest of that. Boy, you don't want to put that in there, do you? We aren't going to overrun all this. We know what we're doing. Put it in there when you're starting out. Now, I'm going to say this over and over. This is not a static budget. You can adjust it every day, and I'll tell you, I did almost every day when I was starting up the co-op. Every time you get new information, you change it. But remember, you have to change both sides to keep it in balance. So the main thing to think of there is start at that 15% level, and as you lock in your costs, if you finished your building renovation, you came in on target, wow, you can take half of that overrun allowance out now, because that's the biggest risk area probably right there. Now, how are we going to pay for all that? We know we got a big bill we're working up. We haven't actually run the numbers yet. We're going to do that in a minute. But where are we going to get that money? I plugged some numbers in here, but these are kind of typical no matter how big the co-op is. Donations and fundraising, there's a real desire to believe that you can do really well with that. But no matter how many ways people have tried, it is pretty rare to raise very much that way. Again, keeping in mind, you are a for-profit business that's operating for the benefit of members of the community. You're not a nonprofit, you know, and while you have a mission, you're mission-driven, there is a difference, and you're not eligible probably for any major grants from charities and foundations. The kind of donations you'll get are going to be relatively small, and they may be mostly based on your fundraising efforts. And the most successful fundraisers I've seen typically can't bring in more than $3,000 or $4,000 net for a well-planned large event, although there are exceptions. Some have brought in more. And they take a lot of work. They also have the side benefit of being a really great way to promote the co-op, so I think you should do them anyway. Grants, I separate that from the other fundraising in thinking more in terms of the kind of grants, like our organization provides some $10,000 seed grants when we have the money available to people who provide grants to us. So it's a pass-through, and there are other organizations like CCCD that sometimes could provide some pass-through grant funding to help with development. These are anything from $5,000 to $10,000 or maybe a little more. The USDA has some grant funding available for co-op development in rural areas that some co-ops have taken advantage of. Your local economic development authority may be your best source to tackle for this one. For a little bit of business development funding or business research, they may be able to help out, they may not. So you can see the question marks, they're there for a reason. Don't put all your eggs in those baskets. There's no guarantees that you're going to get free money. Now here's where it gets really important. The member equity and member loans. Member equity is whatever your membership costs and how many members can you bring in. So you have to set that based on more than what I can tell you today, but basically it's what is your community. You have to look at your community, and you have to look at what your needs are, your realistic needs for capitalizing the co-op. Keeping in mind that while that number may not be huge, it's going to be really important because it leverages a lot of other things. Member loans, tough but necessary, and California, you can do it. Other states, it's harder. A couple states, it's not even legal. So being hard is better than not being possible, I think. So you're ahead there. But this number used to be closer to 33% that we were telling people. It's up to 50 or even higher now, and the reason is mainly because of the bank lending crisis. There's just no commercial lending. In some communities, almost literally no. In others, it's very, very hard to get.
Can I offer something about the membership equity? And sorry for the folks who were in yesterday's session where I was talking about this. We've had great success by pegging our full membership at $300, which is the maximum allowed in California under securities trading law. You don't have to apply for a permit to go to $300. But our successful approach was to offer a payment plan, and different co-ops have used different approaches. Ours is $30 to get started, at least $30 a year, and that's been really great for people just to get their foot in the door. And later on, they'll add a little more, sometimes go up to $300 once they have a little more confidence in what we're doing.
I definitely believe that every co-op should offer some form of pay-in option, but don't promote it too heavily, because you'll find that the people that need it the least are the first to take it. You need the money up front. I mean, how are you going to open a co-op if you don't have the capital? It's nice. You can't carrying it on your books as accounts receivable does not convince anybody of anything except you that you've got future support. So you want to encourage people strongly to invest as early as possible, as much as possible. But you do want to make it accessible to your community, so having a payment plan option for people should be part of that, I think. Other equity, see, we've gone from 1 question mark to 3. Yeah.
Quick question, the membership, that's a one-time fee?
Usually.
There's not a yearly membership
No,
fee?
if it's an annual fee, then it's taxable income. It's a fee, as opposed to a membership share or equity. Membership equity is not taxable. It goes on the balance sheet as equity. An annual membership fee is income and is taxable.
And most co-ops have a membership fee also?
No, most do not.
Do not.
Right.
And if you're are gonna go with the cap of $300, it's recommended you call it a cap. Don't call it a lifetime.
Yeah, don't say lifetime.
Right.
You might change it later, especially those co-ops that start out at a lower level where they have room to move up. Yeah.
I'm curious, in the budgeting process and the actual operation in the startup phase, is it common to break this into phases so that you
Yes.
say, this is what phase one is this, but if we don't get X, like so many memberships, equity, then we stop there, or?
Well, you might not stop there, but you know that you have to finish that stage before you're ready to move on. We do actually have and I'm doing the next session on timelines. We do talk about that a little bit more there, setting targets for each time organizing stage.
Yeah.
How many members you need, how much equity, or have you started bringing in member loans yet, or whatever that is. Yeah.
The reason why I mention that is in other settings, whether, like you have investors,
Yeah.
you say, or you get preliminary commitments, but you say, if we don't raise X amount of capital, or we don't get a bank loan for a building,
Right.
then we stop there, or, in other words, your
Go, no
commitment
go
is
decision point.
conditional.
Yes.
And we're not gonna take your money or use it unless we have reached a certain goal.
That is very common, but let me put a cautionary note on that, because I heard a comment earlier, and I think Placerville did this, and it's not the way I would normally recommend it. Member equity coming in, you need to be ready to spend. You should not tell people that money is safe. How are you going to start a business without any money? I mean, that's the only real income you've got. You need that to be accessible. They're investing in a startup, it's at risk. They need to know that. If the business doesn't open, they will get back whatever their share is of whatever wasn't spent. That's a reasonable expectation, and I think it's the way that we would recommend that you try to do it. If you try to put it all aside in escrow until you hit some point, what are you doing in the meantime? It's hard to manage, and it doesn't make sense.
Can I add on to that? In California, at least, there are some laws that you can run into if you say for the membership loans, you can put it in an escrow account and only spend it if you get everything you need. You have to be careful about that. Consult an attorney, because there are some laws that you run into there about how to disperse it, and they're triggering things. I don't really understand it, but just be aware that by saying you're hold on to it until you reach a certain funding level, you could run into some legal issues.
With your member equity program and your anything that's bringing in money through the membership, get legal review. No matter whether you borrowed it from the co-op just down the street and took their paperwork verbatim, they might have had that written up 10 years ago, and even if the law didn't change, the interpretation does. So always get legal review on this stuff. But it is more common to see loan commitments held in escrow until final decision to go forward is made. So, and again, I don't have specific information about California because I work across the country, and every bloody state's different.
Good question. When you say member loans, are you talking of a few members of the co-op putting their personal money
Yes.
for the benefit?
Hopefully more than a few.
30 to 50%.
No, I would say 25 to 30% would be very good. That would be a target that we'd like to say that is possible if you do a really good member loan campaign. And that's going to be a range of $1,000 from some people on up to maybe 10 or 20 from a few. So, some co-ops have raised $1 million. Startup co-ops have raised over $1 million in member loans. Others have had a struggle to haven't made 100,000. So it's part of it's. I'm more and more convinced that it's the approach, because even in low-income, impoverished rural communities, I've seen 300,000 or more raised. So it's just a very difficult thing to do.
For local recent examples, Placerville Natural Foods. That was
70.
I'm sorry?
No, I think there were about 77,000 that they raised.
Yes, and for Great Basin Food Co-op in Reno, for their third store move increase, they managed to raise 460,000. So that's one more, but that's built. That's not I'd say exactly a startup. I mean,
Right,
they've been
yeah.
in a 500 square foot store, and now they're up to 6,000, which is where most people would want
There was
to
a
start.
startup outside of Minneapolis, Harvest Moon, that raised about $1 million.
Yep.
What did you say was the amount that the Placerville folks raised?
77.
There's member and then there's kind of insider loans.
That's
I think
both of them combined. All member loans from like the board, they call it insider loans, and this is a California thing, I think, but
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
thought we were talking about members. Okay.
yeah, though it's from members, but some of those members were members with a special relationship. The SEC likes special relationships because they assume then that the people are very knowledgeable and aren't getting scammed. So people that are on the board of directors and have long-standing relationship or have so much money that they can throw it away without worrying, they're allowed to make investments that other people can't make.
I was wondering if there was a, oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was just wondering if there was a rule of thumb on like the minimum loan size you take, just
1,000.
because of paperwork and.
Usually 1,000.
Yeah,
I have, very rarely I've seen people go 500, but, and I, even co-ops that probably was a mistake, a co-op did 2,000 because they misheard what the recommendation was, and they did quite well with it. So you never know.
As far as deciding what size the store should be to start out
Yes.
with, and if you're expanding and such, maybe you can get something in between.
Well, that's,
Is there a relationship between the square footage and the amount of members?
yes.
Is there a direct relationship?
There are some relationships, but it's all based on, really ultimately it's the sales. That's why we go back to that strong recommendation that you get a professional market study. If you have a sales projection that's if your sales projection will tell you, you can, from that, you can say what's the ideal store size to support that sales level. And basically it also tells you, because we know pretty well what the typical purchase amount from a member or any customer in the store is. So if you've got a certain, we're $400 to $600 per square foot in sales is pretty typical for a startup, that range, yeah, annual sales. Yeah.
$400 to $600.
Yeah, but don't quote me on that, because that really goes all over. Some of them are much higher.
And how many members would you say per square footage? I mean, per member, how much square
So
footage?
I
Do
don't
you have a
know.
number like that?
Bill has set some benchmarks in that. I'm not as comfortable with those as I am with some of the others we have. I'm more interested in seeing that co-ops have enough members to support their budget, both their startup budget and their operating budget. And that, you can't have too few, but that's where you really need to look at it.
So when you're saying 400, I'm sorry, just one more clarification.
Yep.
So you've said $400 to $600 per square foot, that's what you should be making
That's what you would expect a startup co-op to do, and that,
to make.
and that's on retail square feet.
Okay.
Always keep in mind whether you're talking retail or gross.
It sounds like in Placerville, that there are some startup efforts that your organization is intimately involved in.
Yes.
So are you a resource to help?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's what we do.
Okay, so all our follow-up and questions about a lot of the details of this, you're,
Yep.
and does a startup co-op join your, how does
No.
that happen?
You don't have to join. We're a nonprofit. We're supported by a foundation, both USDA and the Blooming Prairie Foundation, which is a co-op funded foundation, and all of our services and resources are free. They're mostly available online because there's a very small staff, and because we don't charge anything, we're strapped. We can't come and visit you very often, but we'll be happy to talk to you, and we try to make as much of what we do available on the website so that you can get it when you need it.
So that's your services, but like Bill services?
Bill is a professional
Mills.
consultant, yes, and most of the people that do in-depth work are going to expect to be paid, and it's their livelihood. They're cheaper than some consultants, but they're not free. So just so you know. Anyway, I will take as many questions as I can going through it, but I also want to make sure we get to the end, and then we'll have whatever time is left is all yours. So anyway, this is owner's contribution, at least 48% of the total budget coming from the members and the owners. That's really important. It's your business, and it's going to tell the rest of the world where the support is. So we talked, again, I don't know which other workshops you may have been in, but landlord contribution in some cases can be quite high, but if the landlord really wants to support what you're doing or really needs a tenant or whatever reason, they may contribute something. They may do some of the renovation work. They may finance some of the renovation work by allowing you to roll it into your lease. There's a lot of ways you can, that doesn't really save you money, but it does bring your cash down at the beginning, which is important. So it's a maybe, but it's something to look for, to ask for. Vendor credit, and this is your payment terms. I mean, it's just, you've got the stuff on the shelf, but you don't have to pay for it for a while. That, it's worth about 25, typically, depending on what kind of terms you negotiate, up to 25% of the value of your inventory. And part of that is this opening orders. You can negotiate some pretty darn good deals if you're big enough and you look solid enough. Not everybody gets them, but you can get extended payment terms, you can get free fill, you can get discounted first orders, you can get all kinds of vendor support. You gotta ask for it. You gotta ask for it. They won't offer it otherwise.
What is free fill?
Free fill is almost as clear as it sounds. When you're first setting up your shelves, your distributor has deals that they've got in their back pocket from the distributors and the manufacturers that they work with. You get our product on the shelf in a store, it's more likely to stay on the shelf. So they'll give you half price merchandise if you'll put their line on the shelf. Only the first time you order it usually, and what they'll try to do is to make you stock every flavor of the product, including the ones with half as much salt and twice as much sugar. And so you've got a row this long of product mix from one company. You don't have to do that, but that's what the reasoning is. They want to make sure their product is in your store. And the best time to get it there is the first time you stock the shelves, so they'll give you deals. City and community funds. Okay, we're getting up to the 4 question mark level now. It's hard, I mean, there's some communities that have provided major funding to new co-ops. The Company Shops Co-op in Burlington, North Carolina, not only got a state grant, they got city funding for improvements in the street, parking, and other stuff. Because they wanted business development in that neighborhood. If you're at the right place at the right time, the money might be there. Otherwise, there's nothing. So ask. Be sure to make those connections and ask. It's another one of those things that nobody's going to come telling you, hey, the city's got money. No. You have to know the right person who knows the right person, and you talk to them, and then you fill out the forms, and then you do a little lobbying. You have to work for this money, but it is sometimes out there. All right, so now this stuff, 10 or 20%, typically. And I'm saying typically, every project's different, but if you take this whole thing and put it together using the guidelines I'm giving you, you're going to be awful close to what that's all I'm saying. Finally, whatever's left over has got to come from a major lender. Otherwise, you just go back and reallocate it and find it from those other sources. But that major lender is hard to get. So, right now, we used to say 50%. 25, you're lucky. I've seen projects turned down that had 75% of their equity in the bank. And the bank wouldn't give them the other 25. You don't collateral. There's almost no collateral in a startup club. They don't want your equipment. They can't resell your inventory. What else is there? Okay? That's it's not the best model in my opinion for analyzing a loan, but that's how banks do it.
Is there a better chance between banks and credit unions? Is there one or another that just works better?
In some communities, credit unions are very interested in working with you, but they have a credit lending limit. And so they have a very limited amount of business loans that they can make. In some parts of the country, there are co-op development funds that will partner with a bank or maybe be able to lend on their own some portion of what you're looking for, but they typically don't have deep pockets. So for example, in the Minneapolis area, there's the North Country Cooperative Development Fund. They partnered with a bank in Northfield, Minnesota to split the loan that we needed to open a co-op in Northfield. A year later, when I'm sitting down showing financial statements to the bank manager, he's shaking his head and said, I wish I would have taken this whole loan. You guys are good risk. But that's why we needed North Country Co-op Development Fund. They understood co-ops. they leveraged that loan for us when the bank manager hadn't got a clue. So those are the kind of partnership relationships that are often help make it grease the wheels.
Is there one in California?
Yes, but I don't know their lending practices. Twin Pines, does anybody know what Twin Pines does for lending? Or I really don't know, unfortunately.
I think Twin Pines does do some loans. I think we took a loan from them.
There's another one, a Leaf, which works nationally and will also sometimes help put money into development projects. This isn't the area that I didn't come prepared with all the information for that, I'm sorry, but there are a few of those kinds of organizations out there, and they're great partners if you do work with them. Yeah.
With the current bank crisis, there's more and more state banks that are coming up. Hawaii, for example, is coming up with one. There's talk about doing it in California. Do you see better chances getting loans from these state banks?
Right now, what we're seeing is the best chance comes from the more local banks. They're still more in touch with the community. They still have more vested interest in community development, but they're under the same restrictions. Well, not just credit unions, but the banks are being examined more closely. Whereas they might be able to make a loan in the past that wasn't fully collateralized, they might be called on the carpet for that. So it's not just a matter of not understanding the co-op, it's just that they can't document that they made a valid loan or safe loan, and so they have to say no. So there's a lot of things working against us on it. SBA, a year or two from now, might be back on the table for consumer co-ops. There's definitely some effort being put into it, but right now they're not. It's not an option.
Did you say back on the table?
As an option.
So it has been before?
No.
Oh.
Consumer co-ops have never been allowed for SBA loans. And in fact, they were denying them to almost every form of co-op, even though technically, well, it's a long story. Okay. Historically, it goes back almost 60 years to where they thought that consumer co-ops were primarily member service organizations, not nonprofit business that only served its members, and therefore there was no reason why the government should invest in it. Because it's a self-help, we are a self-help organization, but yes, we serve the whole community and we provide access to markets for other distributors and vendors and farmers and everything the Small Business Administration should want.
A more stable economy.
Yes. I mean, we all know this. This is part of what I was saying at the very beginning. We're trying to get the government to understand it the way we do.
But a workers' co-op can get now.
If they meet the certain requirements. It's not a carte blanche. It isn't for any organization. I mean, they've got requirements for all SBA loans. But it's possible, at least. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to walk through this whole thing one more time a different way. This is a fair, when I say typical, I've got it in quotation marks for a really good reason, because nothing's typical. But a modest-sized, potentially successful startup, we like to say needs to be about this size. 3,000 to 4,000 square feet would be the minimum. To be self-sustaining and be able to actually have a good product mix and serve the community well and whatever. Now, there's a lot of startups that are smaller, and there's a fair number that are actually quite a lot larger. Good starting point, okay, just for discussion. So we're going to assume a leased site, about 4,000 square feet of retail is about 6,000 gross, with first year sales projections of about 2.4 million. Okay, great. Sounds good. How do you like that bottom line?
Well, we're starting with $15, so we got a ways to go.
You got a little bit, yeah, but you got a 15. That's a good start. Okay. All right. So this is the range. You can skip all the rest. How big is your store going to be? $250 to $280 a square foot. So what's going to cost you to open a retail food co-op if you do it right? These are the actual numbers, and these are based on the midpoint of those ranges that I showed you before. The leasehold improvements for that applies to the whole 6,000 square feet, because you have to fix up the offices and the back room storage and everything else. Okay. Equipment, inventory, fees. This is all the big numbers up here. Of course, the working capital isn't chump change either. Again, pointing out, the working capital allowance, that can be somewhat flexible, but if you cut it too small, you're going to be raising working capital after you open, and it's really a lot harder than it is before you open. It's a lot harder. Once you open the store, you go to people and say, hey, we need some working capital. They say, well, you're running a business. Why do you want to borrow money from you to start a business? I mean, it doesn't make sense. So get it ahead of time if you can. And then this number is the one where you, by good project management and good luck, no rude surprises, that could be zero. But you can't put it on the budget at zero. We shouldn't. Yeah.
Where's the rent?
There is no rent. This is before you open. The rent, well, there is rent. It's the holding site costs right here. That's only the rent before you open, remember. This is not an operating budget. Okay, so it's pretty small.
What does that include then, the holding site costs?
It's your your deposits of any kind that you have to make, and your rent that you pay in the months before you open. You can negotiate that. Some landlords, occasionally you don't pay any, but that's pretty rare. Usually you'll get a discounted rate while you're doing renovations and going up to full rate before you open.
So this is about 6,000 square feet?
This is based on the 6,000 gross square footage. Your actual results may vary.
And gross, the difference between gross and retail is that the gross includes an administrative area and
Storage, yep, offices, storage, restrooms, all that sort of stuff. It's not optional. It's just not retail. Okay, so then here's the actual numbers that would fit that same scenario for the sources. A little bit of money in the free money side. Member equity, that's based on, I don't remember what I based, 1,000 members at $150, let's say, which would be a fairly typical scenario for a store of that size, by the way, also. More stores are opting to go at a lower rate than the maximum for member equity. I tend to think it's a mistake. I think they should try to go higher, but 150 is fairly common. Member loans, that's a number you're going to really need to try to target. It's a high number, but there it is. So that brings you up to $800,000, which is about half. Well, we're staying within close to those percentages we talked about. I feel like that's a little optimistic, but it's there. And that's, the rest, it's pretty self-explanatory. But you still got borrowing $500,000 still from the bank in this scenario.
Could I add on about that landlord contribution?
Yep.
We've started looking around for a broker for our location, and the first one we talked to was saying that a lot of owners are kind of short on cash right now, so they may be less likely to make changes or to offer to do anything that would involve their cash flow, but
Right.
they might be willing to negotiate for things that are not going to affect their cash flow.
When it comes to your lease and anything to do with your landlord, everything is negotiable. It's really important that you have somebody that knows what they're talking about to help you with that, because it can make a huge difference, and not just to get the store open, but long term. How much of the maintenance are you responsible for? Our contract said that the landlord was responsible for ensuring that we had an appropriate and adequate heating and ventilation system at the time of opening, but that we were responsible for maintenance. Well, that was a good thing we had that in there, because we had some major issues that had to be resolved. Okay, that big budget we're talking about, co-ops are doing this all the time, folks. All right, it's $1.6 million is a really big number. If you set your sights on raising $500,000 and opening a small co-op with used fixtures and we'll grow, we'll do the best we can. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get a $500,000 co-op. If you want the co-op that you're thinking about in your brain, with nice fixtures, efficient use of the store, great product mix, being able to really support the local economy through buying from farmers, producers, and other people, you might need to spend more money up front. But you have to, those are the stories you tell people along the way to help bring that money in as well. It's marketing. New equipment, nice equipment, clean store, custom cleanliness, attractiveness, product mix, friendly staff, Every survey you've ever seen on what people use to pick a grocery store includes those factors. You skimp on them, it affects your sales. Sorry to say, you know, co-op customers are like other people. They're not totally committed to what we're doing 100%. They'll shop in the store no matter what. So higher initial costs have long-term benefit in terms of having a more effective business, a business that brings people in instead of scaring them away, first impressions and everything. You know, people choose their grocery stores and stay with them. So you really want to wow people when they come in. And you know, I'm really hitting this one hard, and it's for a reason, because you're going to get a lot of pressure when you have trouble raising money to cut your budget. Oh, well, you know, I know the sales and market study says we could do this much business, we should have a store this size, but if we start with 1/2 that size, we can cut the budget and we can grow into a bigger one later. Sure you can. You're going to have to go through the whole process all over again. It's like starting a new store to double in size. You've got to raise money again, you've got to look for a site again, you've got to negotiate again, you've got to bring in inventory, fixtures, and renovations. It's easier to do it right the first time. Yeah.
You were mentioning several times to buying the machines new.
Yes.
There's another way of, instead of buying them, to lease them. Do you
Sometimes.
Do you feel like one's better than the other as far as like maintenance costs will go and such?
I don't have much experience with leased equipment. I think I don't know how available that is, but it's certainly worth checking. Most people have to buy it, and reconditioned equipment is available. Some people do a really lousy job of reconditioning. Some people do a good job. It's an option.
Because the advantage of lease would be you only have to pay monthly payments. You don't have to pay upfront cost.
Right. And I've also heard of some stores that have actually gotten their landlords to cover a large part of the equipment cost and roll it into the lease. That's a landlord that does have cash. That may or may not be the case very often. So think hard about cutting costs and what the impact of that is. You know, it's part of your image as a store. It's part of your service to the community as well. And the long-term operating costs are definitely affected. So when you're putting together that sources budget, having trouble raising money from members, that's a red flag, folks. There's two things that are going on. There isn't enough support for your co-op inherently, or you're not doing a very good job of talking about it. Either way, you got to fix it or decide to go a different way. So pay attention to that. Super important. That member capital, without it, you're not going to get anything else. The membership numbers and the money you've raised from your members is what you take to the bank and say, look at the support we've got. We've got 1,200 members signed up. I've got a customer list right now, and I haven't even opened the store. You got any other businesses that can tell you that? All right. Member loans are very superior to bank loans. It's pseudo equity almost. Banks used to give it to you as equity almost straight up, but now they'll still consider their loan is going to get repaid before the members' loans, so it helps them feel more comfortable. The fact that you've got members willing to risk hundreds of thousands of dollars on the business gives them more comfort. Okay? All of those things. The member loan is generally going to be less expensive, maybe a lot less expensive, 1 to 3% instead of 8% for a startup. And you can structure it over a much more flexible time span for repayments. Members are much more likely to be willing to restructure their loan if you are having trouble paying them back on time. All good reasons why you want to try to put your money in that basket if you can.
How long does it take on average to get those securities cleared through these?
Depends on the state. I can't answer. In some states, it's almost nothing. You don't have to actually register. And in California, it's 2 to 6 weeks or more.
Yeah, Placerville got theirs cleared in about 2 weeks. They went through the San Francisco office. We're down in Southern California. Ours is going through LA. And so far, it's been 6 weeks, and we're still not hearing anything back from them, so we don't really know.
But you need to plan this ahead. This is a really sophisticated and complicated project that needs legal review and a lot of administrative support to do it right. Whether it's volunteer or professional or whatever it is, you spend 6 weeks or more planning a member loan campaign that may only take 6 weeks, so, if you do it right.
Although in California, you have a 1-year period within this structured loan agreement, or it's a term, permission or permit to take in loan, 1 year.
This new jobs bill, incidentally, which is going to allow for crowd funding more or less, that won't affect us for a couple of years until they've got the rules laid out, potentially. Could be real helpful for co-op fundraising. Don't put your eggs in the donation basket, or you're going to be disappointed. If you get them, great, but don't plan them. And angel investors are as hard to find as real angels. But they do exist. There's 2 or 3 co-ops that are open right now that had several $100,000 come from a single individual, not usually as a grant, but as a low-interest loan that got the business going.
Foxdog. Foxdog got started. Angel investor. They
Yeah.
were really named Angel, right?
Well, yeah, that's a smaller version, a small angel compared to, I'm talking about several $100,000 in a friendly city. One member.
Always Oprah.
Yeah, good luck. Yes, you know what? Honest to God, buy a lottery ticket too.
I said Oprah.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, you're looking at this budget and you've got all this stuff in it. It's gonna change. Of course something's gonna change. Everything's gonna change. It's gonna keep changing until you open the store. As soon as they go in and start making those renovations, they're gonna find something that wasn't in the budget. I guarantee it. They may find several things. They may actually save money, but probably not. You won't get as many member loans as you thought, or you do. You get more, you know. Keep moving it around. Don't be afraid of that. It's not one thing that you put down on paper and it has to be that way or you can't open the store. No, as long as you can keep the 2 columns in balance and they support your vision, keep it moving. And the other thing that I didn't show you, because I just want to give you it's on the website, it's on the template. The actual template has 3 tabs. One tab is the basic sources and uses budget, much like we looked at. One tab breaks it down into a timeline, how much of the sources and uses you have to raise at each stage of the project. Some stores don't even go that far. Some stores love to have all the detail. I can go either way on that one. I don't think there's a huge advantage. It helps to think, it helps in planning the activities that you're doing to raise money, maybe. That would be the reason for staging it out. But
And isn't it recommended within the program, CES advocates that you raise 80% of your funds before you commit to the build-out and the lease?
I don't know if that's the exact number. No, you wouldn't be able to. No, you're going to have to commit to a lease usually before you can get a successful member loan campaign. Have a contingent lease. This is where it gets complicated. This is, again, beyond this scope of what this workshop is, but this is the biggest problem that almost every co-op faces. Nobody wants to make financial commitments because you don't have a space yet, or you don't have a general manager yet, or you don't have something yet. You've got to convince people that you are strong enough, that you've got good business plans, that it is going to happen, that your dream is their dream, and it's all going to work. And you got to. That's why the market study, to show you're not just guessing that there's business. A good business plan that shows how you're using the money and how it's, and that you've got the talent and you're thinking about everything. All of those things are part of a business. You've got 2 things happening here. You're organizing, starting an incredibly sophisticated and difficult business in a competitive market. Okay? The other thing is you're organizing a community around economic, not just economic development, but social benefit. And they're 2 different skill sets. And people could think that one will carry over to the other. They don't. You have to do both. And you have to realize that you're doing both, I think, to be very effective. So community organizing and storytelling, that's a great skill set. It won't necessarily handle the details of the planning that have to be in place before the bank will work with you, or before even some of your members will lend you money. So you've got to, different jobs for different people. So anyway, you don't have to write this down. The only thing you have to remember is our website, foodcoopinitiative.coop. Everything is linked from there. We have a toolbox on the front page of our website. Click on the little bar that says resources. There's a link to all of the recorded webinars, including this one. There's a link to the template for that I've been talking about for the sources and uses budget. There's all kinds of other tools, and you can sign up for our contact list so that if we do have grants available or we're doing training somewhere, you'll find out about it. We don't use it for anything else. So, but this was a couple of years ago. We haven't really changed it that much, except to update the parameters for how much to expect to spend, because that's gone up, of course. But he's fine-tuned it and continues to tweak it. And I don't know if when you go to this link, you'll see also a download for the template. If you get the template from 2008, when you do that, then go to our site, and there's a separate place where you can just download the template. That'll be more current. That's us, and that's all. Thank you.